Hello, friends. This is Jim with Science Talk, and have a nice little report from the field of paleontology. And ironically, it involves Antarctica. But remember, during the Triassic, Antarctica was not at the bottom of the planet. It was mid-latitudes. So, here's the headline. Before there were dinosaurs, this Triassic lizard king, quote unquote, ruled Antarctica. So long before, the big sauropods, long before T-Rex and other large-eating, meat-eating dinos, a forested Antarctica was home to an iguana-sized lizard. This ancient reptile was an Archosaur. Now, before I proceed any further, let's discuss what an Archosaur is. This is significant. Archosaur is the branch of organisms that gave rise to the dinosaurs, the crocodilians, and birds. This is the grand ancestor of them all. Now, the dinosaurs, of course, are subdivided into the Saurischians, which are those that have a lizard-shaped hip. In other words, the position of the pubis bone is basically at an angle to the ilium, whereas in the other group is the Ornithians, which are the bird hip dinosaurs. Examples of that would be like the Triceratops. The Saurischians, the theropods, Allosaur, T-Rex, Velociraptor. Now the Ornithians, the pubis and the ilium were parallel when you look at the structure of the pelvis. And ironically, it's the theropods, a group of theropods, that gave rise to birds. So that type of pelvis evolved twice. Interesting. So you also have the crocodilians, and then you also have the birds. Now, there is a suggested reclassification that instead of calling a class Aves, we're calling it a class Dinosauria, and then you have subclass. You have subclass Ornithian, subclass Saurischian, subclass Aves. The crocodilians would still be grouped with the reptilians, and that's mainly due to the structure of the skeletal structures as well as metabolism. If you look at the archosaurs, all of them have the legs, the hind legs, under the pelvic girdle. Crocodilians are splayed out to the side. And there's the evidence continues to mount and indicate that the Dinosauria were warm-blooded. Crocodilians tend not to be warm-blooded. The same thing is true for the pterosaurs and pterodactyls. They are also classified as reptiles. So, scientists recently discovered a partial skeleton of the lizard dating to 250 million years ago. Okay. Now, it's correct to call this specimen a lizard. So, what this find does, it helps explain the evolutionary landscape following the biggest mass extinction in Earth's history, which was the Permian. And I just did a two-part video segments on discussing the Permian extinction. What the fossil, of course, was incomplete. It's very rare to find a full, complete fossil, but the research is able to tell from fused vertebrae that the animal was an adult. It is likely measured 4 to 5 feet, or 1.2 to 1.5 meters in length, and the current, it's not official yet, but the pending scientific name is Antarctanix shackletoni. Shackletoni was, of course, is a reference to Ernest Shackleton, who did some exploring down in Antarctica. So the first part of the name comes from the Greek word for Antarctic king, and the second part, of course, as I just said, is to Ernest Shackleton. Subtle features in the bones of the lizard's spine and feet indicated that it was a new species, and its foot shape suggested it lived on the ground, scampering around on the forest floor. This is a statement from the study's author, Brandon P. Cook, who is a Meeker postdoctoral fellow at the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. It does not have any adaptations in its feet that would make us think it lived in the trees or that it burrowed into the ground. Now, we think of Antarctica today as, covered by basically 1.5 to 3 kilometers of ice. And it's hard to think of it as once being kind of a lush place, forested and so forth, but that's what it was. It was a warm, wet environment with temperatures rarely, if ever, dipped below freezing, study authors reported. So Dr. P. Cook continues, we have evidence of widespread forests all over the place, big rivers moving through those forests. Roaming among the trees and rivers were amphibians, mammal relatives called cynodonts, other mammal-like predators called dicynodonts, and basically these are creatures that had tusks and beaks and so on. And of course the Antarctanics specimen as well. So the fossil is also very important in that it fills in a lot of stories of evolution, fills in some gaps. With the discovery of this previously unknown specimen, researchers are piecing together the unexpected Archosaur diversity that arose shortly after the Permian mass extinction. And that cataclysmic event was about 252 million years ago. That wiped out 96% of all marine species, 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. 96% of all marine species. Scientists previously thought that after that global extinction event, it took many millions of years for animals to diversify and fill the empty niches that became available. But Antarctanics shows that archosaurs began diversifying within just a couple of million years after the Permian extinction, according to this study. Dr. P. Cook continues, if you look at the earliest rocks of the Triassic, archosaurs and other groups are radiating explosively. While Antarctanics' iguana-like body may not seem especially dramatic, some Triassic reptiles evolved to fly through the airs, such as the pterosaurs. Others returned to the seas, eventually evolved into ichthyosaurs, which is basically translated as fish lizards. These are reptiles that look like fish. And, of course, the plesiosaurs. Those who think that Nessie and Loch Ness exist, they say, oh, it's probably a plesiosaur. Be that as it may. So think about it. We had 96% extinction in the marine system. There's a lot of niches to fill in there. So it would make sense that you would have radiation, adaptive radiation taking place, where you then have reptiles filling in various aquatic niches that are there to be had. So the ichthyosaurs, the pterosaurs, the plesiosaurs, their ancestors likely merging at the same time as Antarctanics. The existence of Antarctanics in the early Triassic implies that all these other crazy lineages, this is Dr. P. Cook's own words, must have existed at this point already, even if we don't have a good fossil record or a complete fossil record of them at this time. This study was published in the Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology. So I just wanted to bring you that, to me it's always fascinating to learn of more fossil specimens that are found and how they can fill in evolutionary gaps and help our understanding of the relationships of organisms, the evolution of organisms, etc. So this is very interesting, it's fascinating, and I kind of wanted to share that with you. So thank you for your time, and we'll talk soon. Hey friends, this is Jim reminding you to subscribe and share my videos. Also, don't forget to click the bell so that you know when I drop a video in. And I'm also asking for you to please support the work that I do by becoming a patron at patreon.com. Details in the description box below. Thank you for your continued support.